Hi guys, it's your boy, Bruce. I'm here to introduce the Shooting Range 2.0. Why? Improved graphics, improved presentation, improved audio. All because we're moving from 2K to 4K. That's right, Shooting Range 2.0. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell. Shooting Range 2.0. Let's go.
In this episode, Pages of History, how the engineers of the world conquered the sound barrier. Tactics and strategy, what is hull break, and how you can cause it in battle. And Metal Beasts, an upgunned Centurion devised by Israeli engineers. After the Six-Day War, the Israeli military made a thorough assessment of all the flaws of the British Centurion Mark Vs that were a big part of the Israeli arsenal. Their biggest flaw, as it turned out, was that they were quite vulnerable to heat rounds, and so the work was cut out for Israeli engineers. A few years later, all shots, that was what they called the Centurion in the Israeli Defense Forces, underwent heavy modernization. This time, we will discuss one of the most promising modifications of this vehicle that became a part of the British tech tree with update 1.85. Say hi to the Shot Kal Daliet. Shot Kal means a light whip in Hebrew. At the same time, Kal here hints at Continental, the name of the new engine that had to be installed in order for the vehicle to perform well in desert conditions. Front armor received an upgrade in the form of a Blazer ERA package. The ERA also covers the lower sides of the turret. The tank comes with 4 secondary armaments: 2 Belgian FN mags on the roof and a high-caliber Browning on the turret right above the main gun, and yet another FN mag coaxial with the main cannon and built into the turret. At the same time, the familiar 20-pounder was taken out to make room for a more powerful 105mm Sharir cannon. Crew positions stayed the same: 3 tankers in the turret and 1 between the tracks near to the conventionally designed ammo rack, and the engine compartment bearing the Teledyne Continental 750 HP diesel engine. What's the best way to use the Shot Kal? The first thing you have to take into account is that this vehicle is not the fastest, so to speak, for its BR, 8.3 in RB and 8.7 in arcade. Thanks to the efforts of the Israeli engineers, it is faster than stock British Centurions, but not fast enough to race with German or Soviet tanks. On average, you'll be making around 38 kph, when going downhill or on a good road, up to 48 kph. In other words, this tank wasn't built for rapid flanking maneuvers. It wasn't built for desperate rushes either. Trying to hastily get to your favorite position in the center of the map will only get you shot, and will cost you the vehicle. Shot Kal is a tank for snipers. Try to find a good position on your side of the map with a good view over common routes and known enemy positions. After scoring a few eliminations, move forward slowly and carefully. Make your way to your next position, getting rid of enemies that you spot while on the move. That might sound overly ambitious, but your gun is more than capable of getting it done. On a maxed-out vehicle, it takes its 7.1 seconds to reload, which is on a par with most Western tanks and faster than the Soviet ones. Furthermore, the Shot Kal has great depression and elevation angles, from -10 to +18 degrees. That allows you to shoot from behind some natural cover and even hunt those pesky helicopters. When it comes to shells, you get 4 different shots: an AP FSDS, a Heat FS, a HESH, and a smoke round, taking into account the fact that at its BRs, most of your engagements will be fought at considerable distance, and the fact that this is a sniping vehicle. We suggest that the bulk of your ammo should consist of M111 shells. The M111 is an APFSDS with great performance. At close range, it pierces 385mm of armor and is capable of dealing crippling damage. To a shell like that, most armor is next to non-existent. If you're good at precision fire and can take out several crew members at once or destroy critical modules, you'll get a fair share of one-shot eliminations as well. Take a few M152 Heat FS shells as well. They work wonders against vehicles vulnerable to hull break, which we'll discuss a bit later today. A penetration rate of 400mm also make them a great choice when engaging heavily armored targets. Just keep in mind that these rounds can go off when coming in contact with insignificant obstacles like fences or even some vegetation. Be careful. The last round that you should consider getting is the smoke one. No more than 3, just for contingencies, like when you have to disengage, cover a crippled ally, or ruin the day of an annoying sniper. Can the shotcal take a punch, though? Obviously, you should avoid getting hit by all means, especially when finishing enemies that have access to large calibers of 100+ millimeters. But in most of your battles, a lot of your opponents will still rely on heats, which your ERA makes short work of. Of course, it only covers parts of your tank and works only once, but it still makes you considerably tougher. If you are hit, it's time to make use of smoke grenades. You can almost instantly create a thick cover of smoke by shooting off grenade packs. Not once, but 2 times. And then you still have access to 10 additional grenades that can be fired off one by one, enough to drown the whole map in smoke. All in all, the Shotcal Dalat is a great tank with a monster of a gun, fast reload, and some great protection against heat munitions. Its only big flaw is its limited mobility, which means that you have to adopt a more careful approach to battles. Happy hunting! With Update 1.85, War Thunder introduced the first supersonic aircraft, the Soviet MiG-19 PT, and the American F-100D Super Sabre. But in real life, the journey to supersonic speeds was far from quick and smooth. Aircraft designers devised planes that were getting faster and faster, but were more and more prone to encountering unknown phenomena of vast destructive power. Aviators were the first to experience that. At the speeds of 800 kph or higher, their aircraft started to shake inexplicably, and they risked being forced into an uncontrolled dive. The only way to take back control was to lose some speed, if their aircraft at that point still had some control surfaces, that is. This phenomenon took dozens of lives. Late piston fighters even got a special red marker on their speedometers, sending a very clear message: don't go any faster than this if you want to live. The thing is that the air your aircraft encounters on the fly has to find its way around the complex geometry of the aircraft's fuselage and wings. That's how you get lift, by the way. Even when an aircraft itself moves at subsonic speeds, some airflows bypassing the plane move much, much faster. But what makes them dangerous? A flying plane creates sound waves, which are radiated out from the plane in all directions at the speed of around 1,235 kph. But the plane is moving as well, as if trying to catch up with its own sound. When it manages to do that, the sound pressure waves pile up on each other, compressing the air, effectively forming a kind of an air cushion in front of the plane, which hits the wing and the fuselage like a huge invisible hammer. It was evident that in order to break the sound barrier, you had to find a way to pierce that air cushion first. The first breakthrough came in the form of a swept wing, which has the effect of delaying the shock waves and the accompanying aerodynamic drag rise. Germans and Americans experimented with swept wing designs as early as the 1940s, but that was only half of the formula. You also needed something else. A new engine much more powerful than even the best jet turbines of that time. There was only one option then, to use a rocket engine. And so, on the 14th of October 1947, the American test pilot Chuck Yeager was dropped from the belly of a B-29 Superfortress on an experimental Bell X-1 bullet-shaped rocket plane. This aircraft, no more like a piloted rocket, approached the coveted sound barrier several times before, but never broke it. The team behind the experiment was very careful and tried to gather as much information as possible before doing the deed. But that day was the day they finally risked it. The rocket started to shake violently. There was a loud boom in the air. The observers initially thought that was the end, and in a way it was. The end of all the terrible shaking. The buffeting decreased, resulting in a smooth flight. The X-1 just went supersonic. With more information about the phenomenon of the sound barrier, an increasing number of teams started to tackle the issue with their own takes on supersonic aircraft. It took the Soviets a year to break the sound barrier on a plane with a turbojet engine. A test pilot called Ivan Fyodorov managed to conquer the barrier on an LA-176, basically a modified LA-15, in a shallow dive. The Americans claim a similar and even earlier achievement on the Sabre. Then, it took the engineers of the world almost a decade to start the production of turbojet engines powerful enough to allow for supersonic speeds in level flight. During the mid-50s, the USSR finally had their MiG-19 and the USA the Super Sabre. The experimental rocket planes at this point were already flying at more than twice the speed of sound. The progress could not be stopped. War Thunder has a fairly realistic damage model. The game registers all hits, tracks crew, and module damage, and a vehicle can be taken out with a single shot to its ammo rack. There's another way to one-shot an enemy machine, though. It's called hull break. Basically, it's when the hull is hit by a shockwave or a kinetic force so hard that it falls into pieces. To score a hull break, you need, first, to fire a gun with a big enough caliber, 75mm or larger. As for shells, high-explosive filler, HESH, or heat rounds are best for this kind of job. An AP shell or a solid shot might do the trick as well, but you need to aim very carefully. More about that later. Second, you need to have an appropriate target. A vehicle with next to none or no armor. Ideal targets include the ZSU-37, the M56, the Soviet BMP, and many other lightly armored vehicles. Let's show you how it's done with the help of the American M18 Hellcat. Here goes our HE shell. And that's a nothing. What went wrong? The answer is simple. The caliber isn't big enough. That means that the T-34-57 won't work in this capacity. We need something with a punchier gun, like a Panther. We aim for the hull or the turret, works like a charm. If you're using large enough calibers, for instance 122mm or even better, a 152mm HE round, you don't even have to aim for the hull. A hit to the tracks or rollers will do just as nicely. A careless Sheridan plays some mind games with its track sticking out like that. Okay, here's what you get. Bye-bye. Hessian heat rounds work in a similar fashion. As we've said before, the same results can be achieved with solid shots, APHE shells or APCRs. With high enough kinetic energy, you can cause hull break with the force of the impact alone. Let's try that out on the very same Hellcat. Sorry, kitty. We take a shot with an AP shell. Didn't work. Why? It's simple. The armor is so thin that our shell just went right through. It didn't connect with any of the major modules. But if we aim specifically for the engine, the transmission, or the gun breech, we get the desired impact. More than enough to tear the vehicle asunder. No high explosive filler needed. Move along. Study designs of enemy vehicles, pick right shells for the job, and you'll contribute to the victory of your team with lots and lots of glorious one-shot eliminations. And now, we get ready to answer some of your questions. We start with a question from Louise Barros. What happened to their client stability has improved changelogs? I miss them. Never stop working on that. It's just that we prefer to keep that line to the times when there is massive progress. Then there is a question coming from a user called Faulio. Hey Gaijin, could you add a Paris or London map? After all, there is an American map. Hi there. No big announcements today, sorry. But let's say that it's certainly not off the table. Alexei Oroliki writes, how about a rank 6 jet for Royal Air Force that is actually supersonic? I'm waiting. Will do, mate. We won't leave you hanging, for too long at least. And please, no more passive-aggressive tea sipping, scaring the lads. And the last very serious message is from Papa Stalin. Give US T-90 or Gulag. God damn it. Gulag it is then. Well, it was good while it lasted. See you in 20 years, folks. That's it for today. This was the Shooting Range 2.0 by Gaijin Entertainment. If you like what we're doing, subscribe to the channel. This way, you won't miss anything. Click on the little bell. Leave a like and your thoughts in the comments below. Did you enjoy the new version of the show? See you next week on The Shooting Range.